Shin Kong-woo reviewed security footage on multiple screens in his private study, the wheelchair positioned deliberately near the window where passing headlights occasionally illuminated his silhouette. As the head of the Shin syndicate, he was never truly unguarded, even at midnight in his own fortress. The soft chime of the gate intercom interrupted his analysis. "Sir, there's a woman at the gate," his head of security reported through the comm. "She says she needs to speak with you. Says it's urgent." Shin glanced at the monitor showing the gate camera. A black woman in a charcoal suit stood beneath the security light, her posture rigid despite the trembling in her hands clutching what appeared to be a wedding invitation. Sarah Collins. He recognized her immediately, the corporate lawyer whose case files had unexpectedly intersected with his investigation into the Chin family 3 months ago. Let her through. She shouldn't be here. Sarah knew that with absolute certainty as the massive iron gates rolled open. Every instinct honed by years of legal practice screamed at her to turn around, get back in her car, and pretend this insane midnight impulse had never happened. But the wedding invitation in her hand, cream cardstock with gold embossing announcing Marcus Whitmore's marriage to Amanda Chin, felt like it was burning through her skin. The main doors opened before she could knock. A man in a dark suit, clearly armed, gestured her inside without a word. The interior was all cold marble and shadow, beautiful in a way that felt deliberately intimidating. Then she saw him. Shin Kong-woo sat in a sleek black wheelchair at the far end of the entrance hall, backlit by soft lighting that made him look like something carved from stone. Tattoos crept up from his collar, visible even at this distance. His face was striking, sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of her appearance, and an expression of calculated interest that made her throat dry. "Miss Collins," he said, his accent subtle but present. "Breaking into my home at midnight. That's either remarkably brave or remarkably stupid." Before we dive deeper into Sarah's desperate proposition and the dangerous world she's about to enter, welcome to the channel. If you love dark romance, mafia intrigue, and stories where broken people find power in their darkness, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Now, let's see what happens when Sarah crosses the threshold into Shin Kong-woo's empire. "I didn't break in. Your guard let me through. After I told him to. Which means I'm curious." He gestured to a chair across from him with one hand, the movement elegant despite the wheelchair. "Sit. Tell me why a respectable corporate lawyer is visiting the man the prosecutors have spent 5 years trying to destroy." Sarah remained standing. If she sat, she might lose her nerve entirely. "I need to ask you something. It's going to sound insane." "I'm listening." She held up the invitation, her hand steadier than she felt. "My ex-fiancé is getting married in 3 weeks. To Amanda Chin. I was invited. I shouldn't go, but I need to for..." She stopped herself before saying closure. "That sounded weak. I need to show my face. The problem is showing up alone makes me look like exactly what everyone expects. The woman he left behind, still picking up pieces." Shin's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "You want me to be your date to your ex's wedding?" "Yes." "To a Chin family wedding?" "Yes." Sarah's voice gained strength. "You look powerful. Dangerous. Exactly the kind of man who would make people stop wondering why I'm still single and start wondering how the hell I landed you. I'll offer you something in return. My legal expertise. I know the Miura prosecution is trying to build a racketeering case against you. I've reviewed similar cases. I can help you dismantle it." She'd expected him to laugh, to have her thrown out. Instead, Shin studied her with an intensity that made her feel transparent, like he could see straight through to the desperation and rage she'd been carrying since Marcus's betrayal. "You're offering to help me beat a federal case in exchange for one afternoon at a wedding," he said slowly. "Do you understand what you're walking into? What people will think? What it will cost you professionally?" "I understand that Marcus destroyed my career once already," Sarah said, surprised by the venom in her own voice. 3 years ago he fed information about my client to the prosecution. I lost the case. My reputation took the hit. And while I was trying to recover, he was sleeping with my best friend. So yes, I understand exactly what this will cost me. But I'm done letting him win." Shin's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Sit down, Miss Collins." This time she obeyed. "I'll do it," he said. But not for your legal expertise. I have lawyers. What I need is something more valuable. What? Axis. The Chin family doesn't invite me to their gatherings anymore. They've spent the last year consolidating power, making moves against my territory, thinking I'm weakened. He gestured at the wheelchair. This makes me look vulnerable. You arriving at a Chin wedding on my arm will send a message. It will make them nervous. Make them wonder what I'm planning. Sarah's stomach dropped. You want to use me? We'll be using each other. Isn't that what you proposed? He leaned forward slightly. But I have one condition beyond the arrangement itself. You'll tell me the real reason you're going to this wedding. And I want the truth. I just told you. You told me surface reasons. Optics. Pride. What I want to know is this. Why does it matter so much that you'd come to me of all people for help? Sarah felt something crack inside her chest. Because he made me feel small. For 3 years I believed I wasn't enough. Not smart enough, not interesting enough, not woman enough to keep him. And when I see his wedding photos plastered across social media, when I hear people whispering about how he upgraded, I want him to see me walk in with someone who makes him realize he was the one who wasn't enough. I want him to feel a fraction of what he made me feel. She paused, throat tight. Is that pathetic? It's human, Shin said quietly. Revenge usually is. Something passed between them in that moment. Recognition of shared darkness, of matching wounds poorly healed. So you'll do it? Sarah asked. Really? Really? But understand this, Miss Collins. The moment you walk through those gates as my partner, you're in my world. There are rules. Expectations. Dangers you haven't considered. What kind of rules? The kind that keep you alive. Give me the details about the wedding, the people who'll be there, the story we'll need to tell. You have 3 weeks to prepare. And you'll spend them here in my home, learning how to survive in a world where one wrong word can get you killed. Sarah should have said no. Should have recognized the trap closing around her. But sitting across from Shin Kongwoo, seeing her own hunger for vindication reflected in his calculating eyes, she found herself nodding. When do we start? Shin's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at her. No. Your car will be brought to the garage. Minjun will show you to your room. Wait, tonight. I didn't agree to. You agreed the moment you drove through my gates, Miss Collins. Welcome to the devil's contract. Sarah followed Minjun through corridors that seemed designed to disorient, each turn revealing more marble, more shadow, more silent guards positioned at intervals like statues. Her overnight bag felt absurdly inadequate in her hand. She'd packed for one night of impulsive stupidity, not an extended stay in a crime lord's fortress. Mr. Shin has meetings tonight, Minjun said without looking back. His English was perfect, his tone professionally neutral. You'll stay in the East Wing. Don't wander. The guards have orders to escort you back if you get lost. How considerate, Sarah muttered. He stopped at a door, produced a key card and handed it to her. Your room. There are clothes in the closet your size. Dinner will be brought up at 8. How do you know my size? Minjun's expression didn't change. Mr. Shin is thorough. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded too much like a lock engaging. The room was beautiful, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens, a king bed with silk sheets, modern furniture that probably cost more than her car. It should have felt luxurious. Instead it felt like a gilded cage. Sarah dropped her bag and moved to the window. Below she could see the main courtyard. Several black SUVs were parked there, men in dark suits standing in formation. This wasn't preparation for a wedding date. This was something else entirely. She should leave. Call a car, make an excuse, disappear before she got in any deeper. But then her phone buzzed with a text from her former colleague. Saw Marcus and Amanda at the charity gala tonight. They looked so happy. Amanda was showing off her ring to everyone. Sarah's jaw clenched. 3 weeks. She just had to survive 3 weeks. At 9:30 raised voices echoed from somewhere below. Sarah pressed her ear to the door but couldn't make out words, only tone, sharp, threatening, final. Then silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Against every instinct screaming at her to stay put, Sarah opened her door. The hallway was empty, but a dim light spilled from a room at the far end. She moved toward it, her heels silent on the thick carpet. Through the crack in the door she saw them. Shin sat in his wheelchair, perfectly composed, while 3 men knelt on the floor before him. One was bleeding from his mouth. Another was crying. Shin said something in Korean, his voice soft and conversational like he was discussing the weather. Minjun stood behind the kneeling men, a gun in his hand. Sarah's breath caught. She should run. She'd never have come here. But she couldn't move, couldn't look away as Shin wheeled closer to the bleeding man and gripped his chin, forcing eye contact. Betrayal, Shin said in English clearly for her benefit, has a price. The gunshot was deafening. Sarah stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a scream. But it was too late. Shin's head turned toward the doorway, his dark eyes finding hers through the crack. "Miss Collins," he called out, voice perfectly calm. "Since you're already awake, why don't you join us? It's time you learned exactly what kind of man you've made a deal with." Sarah didn't sleep after the execution. She'd stood in that room, forcing herself to watch as the bodies were removed with clinical efficiency, as Shin calmly explained that the men had been selling information to the Chin family. As he'd looked at her with those unreadable dark eyes and asked if she wanted to leave, she'd said no. He didn't know why. Now, 48 hours later, she stood in Shin's private training room while Minjun circled her like a predator assessing prey. "A Chen wedding will be full of enemies pretending to be friends," Minjun said. "You need to recognize which is which before they get close enough to hurt you. Watch the hands. Watch the eyes. The body always betrays intention before the mouth does." He gestured to the monitors showing footage from various social events. Galas, weddings, business dinners. "That man there, third from the left. What do you see?" Sarah studied the screen. "His smile doesn't reach his eyes. His left hand keeps moving toward his jacket. Good. He's armed and uncomfortable. Probably new to this world, which makes him dangerous, unpredictable." Minjun switched to another frame. "Tao, that woman. She's scanning exits. Positioned herself near the door. But she's relaxed, confident. She's security. One of ours, actually." Minjun almost smiled. "You're learning." The door opened. Shin wheeled in, commanding attention without saying a word. "Minjun, give us the room." When they were alone, Shin gestured to the chair across from him. A table had been set with dinner. Some kind of Korean stew that smelled incredible despite Sarah's churning stomach. "Eat," Shin said. "You haven't touched breakfast or lunch. Starving yourself won't change what you saw." "I'm not hungry." That wasn't a request. Sarah's eyes flashed with anger, but she picked up the spoon. The food was good, which annoyed her. Everything here was calculated to be perfect, to make her forget she was essentially a prisoner. "You want to know about the wheelchair," Shin said suddenly. Sarah paused mid-bite. "You don't have to. 18 months ago my brother and I were ambushed leaving a business meeting. They used armor-piercing rounds, hit the car from 3 angles. Professional work." His voice was matter-of-fact, but his hands tightened on the armrests. "My brother died instantly. I took 2 bullets to the spine. The doctor said I'd never walk again. I'm sorry." "Don't be. Pity is useless." He leaned forward. "The ambush was ordered by someone in my own organization. Someone who knew our route, our security protocols, our schedule. Someone I trusted. And you're using the Chin wedding to draw them out. Smart girl." Something almost like approval crossed his face. "When you walk in with me, it will force my traitor's hand. They'll have to make a move. So I'm bait." "We both are." Shin's gaze held hers. "The difference is I'm hunting. You're just trying to prove something to a man who never deserved you in the first place." The observation cut deeper than Sarah expected. "You don't know anything about Marcus. I know he's marrying into the Chin family. I know 3 years ago he tanked your biggest case by feeding evidence to prosecutors." Shin's expression darkened. "And I know he's been working with them ever since. Your ex isn't just a lawyer, Sarah. He's a criminal who uses the law as camouflage." Sarah's world tilted. "That's impossible. Marcus is. The man who betrayed you is also the man helping to destroy me." Shin's voice went soft, dangerous. "Still think you're in control of this arrangement?" Sarah spent the next 72 hours buried in documents. Shin had given her access to his legal files, his security reports, his intelligence on the Chin family. What she found made her blood run cold. Marcus's signature appeared on documents dating back 4 years. Shell company registrations, real estate transfers, all connected to Chin Enterprises. He hadn't just prosecuted her client using insider information. He'd been laundering money for them while wearing a prosecutor's badge. And the ambush on Shin. Security footage showed the shooters arriving in a vehicle registered to a law firm where Marcus had worked as a consultant. Sarah's hands trembled as she cross-referenced the wedding guest list with Shin's enemies list. Nearly 70% overlap. This wasn't a wedding. It was a victory celebration. She found Shin in his study reviewing surveillance feeds. "You knew," she said, slamming the file onto his desk. "You knew exactly who Marcus was when I showed up at your gate." Shin didn't look up. "Yes. So this whole thing, agreeing to be my date, letting me stay here, the training, it was never about helping me. You needed someone close to Marcus. Someone who could get into that wedding without raising suspicion." Partially. Sarah's voice rose. "I came to you desperate and humiliated, and you saw an opportunity to exploit." Now Shin looked at her, and the intensity in his eyes stole her breath. "I saw a woman who'd been betrayed by the same people who tried to kill me. I saw someone smart enough to be useful and angry enough to be dangerous. Yes, I'm using you. But you're using me too. Or have you forgotten why you're really here? That was before I knew you were planning to turn the wedding into a war zone. I'm planning to expose traitors and retrieve stolen assets. If Marcus and his Chin family handlers panic, that's their problem." Shin wheeled closer. "You want out? Leave. But we both know you won't. You don't know anything about what I'll do. I know you've spent 3 days digging through evidence instead of running. I know you look at Marcus's crimes with the same rage I feel toward my traitor. And I know," he paused, something flickering across his face, "that you want revenge as badly as I do." Sarah stepped closer, her anger transforming into something more dangerous. "Why did you really agree to help me? The truth this time." Shin's jaw tightened. "Because when you stood in my entrance hall trying to be brave while falling apart, I saw someone who understood what it costs to survive betrayal. Because using you was strategic, but somewhere between watching you learn to read a room and listening to you dismantle my legal case with surgical precision, I started to—" He stopped. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. "Started to what?" Instead of answering, Shin reached up and pulled her down to him. The kiss was nothing like she'd imagined, not gentle or tentative but consuming, almost violent in its intensity. His hand fisted in her hair, angling her head as he claimed her mouth with a hunger that matched her own. Sarah kissed him back, every wall she'd built crashing down. This was insane. Reckless. Exactly what she needed. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Shin's eyes were dark with want and something that looked dangerously like regret. "That," he said quietly, "is why this arrangement just became much more complicated." The door burst open. Minjun stood there, phone in hand, face grim. "We have a problem. Someone just leaked photos of Sarah entering the estate. Marcus knows she's here." The crimson dress clung to Sarah's body like a second skin, the slit reaching mid-thigh, the neckline daring enough to make her feel exposed and powerful simultaneously. She barely recognized herself in the mirror. This woman looked dangerous, the kind who belonged on a crime lord's arm. "Perfect," Shin said from the doorway. He'd abandoned the wheelchair tonight, standing with the aid of a custom cane that looked more weapon than mobility device. Sarah's breath caught. She'd suspected the paralysis wasn't permanent, but seeing him upright, commanding, made everything feel more real. More dangerous. "You can walk. When necessary. Tonight is necessary." He moved closer, his limp barely noticeable. "The Crimson Tiger Gala is neutral territory, but it's also where my world and the Chin families overlap. We need to sell this. Make them believe you're mine." The possessiveness in his voice sent heat through her. "And if I see Marcus there? Then you make him regret every choice that led to losing you." The underground gala was held in a renovated warehouse, all exposed brick and dangerous elegance. Crystal chandeliers hung above poker tables where millions changed hands with casual indifference. Sarah recognized faces from financial news, political circles, even entertainment, all of them hiding criminal empires behind legitimate facades. Shin's hand rested on the small of her back as they navigated the crowd, his touch burning through the thin fabric. People watched them with barely concealed fascination. Some whispered. Others simply stared. "They're wondering if you're brave or stupid," Shin murmured near her ear. "Maybe both." His low laugh vibrated against her. Definitely both. Then she saw him. James Chin, Marcus's future brother-in-law, holding court near the bar. He spotted her at the same moment, his expression shifting from surprise to contempt. Well, well, James said loudly enough to draw attention as they approached. Sarah Collins. Heard you'd fallen on hard times, but didn't realize you'd fallen quite this far. Trading corporate law for being a cripple's arm candy? That's sad even for you. The room went silent. Sarah felt Shin tense beside her, felt the violence coiling in him like a spring about to snap. But she'd spent 2 weeks learning his world, learning how power worked in spaces where the law didn't reach. She smiled, cold and sharp as a blade. James. Still compensating for your family's failing businesses by running your mouth? I'd heard the Chin Empire was hemorrhaging money, but I didn't realize things were so desperate you'd need to marry your sister off to a mediocre lawyer for legitimacy. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper. Tell Marcus that when he sees me at the wedding he should remember exactly what he gave up. Because the man beside me? He's worth 10 of him. And unlike Marcus, he doesn't need to hide behind his wife's family name to matter. James's face flushed red. He moved toward her, hand reaching out. Shin's cane blocked his path, the silver tip pressed against James's chest. Touch her, Shin said softly, and you'll lose the hand. Security materialized from nowhere. James backed down, but his glare promised retribution. Later, in Shin's penthouse suite, Sarah's adrenaline finally crashed. I shouldn't have said that. I made things worse. You were magnificent. Shin pulled her against him, his mouth finding hers with desperate hunger. This time, when they tumbled into bed, neither pretended it was anything but what it was. 2 people falling into something that would destroy them both if they weren't careful. As dawn broke, Sarah traced the scars on Shin's back, feeling him tense. This doesn't change anything, she whispered. No, he agreed, his voice rough. It changes everything. His phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression darkening. The Chin family just moved up the wedding. We have 72 hours. Sarah first noticed the tail on her second day of freedom. Shin had finally allowed her to return to her apartment to collect belongings. A nondescript sedan, 3 cars back, following her turns with professional precision. She'd learned enough from Minjun to recognize surveillance. What she didn't know was whether it was Shin's people keeping her safe or someone else's watching her for weakness. She found out when she stopped at a coffee shop and the man followed her inside. He was unremarkable, middle-aged, tired eyes, cheap suit. The kind of person who disappeared in crowds. He sat 2 tables away, pretending to read a newspaper while his gaze flicked to her every 30 seconds. Sarah walked directly to his table. You're not very good at this. The man looked up, startled. Then resignation crossed his face. Miss Collins, I think we should talk. Somewhere private. 20 minutes later, they sat in her car in an empty parking garage. The man, David Rodriguez, according to his PI license, looked like he was calculating whether honesty or lies would get him killed slower. Marcus Whitmore hired me 6 weeks ago, he said finally. Before you ever showed up at Shin's estate. He wanted surveillance on Shin Kongwoo, documentation of his activities, anything that could be used as leverage. Sarah's stomach dropped. 6 weeks ago. Before I got the wedding invitation. The invitation was sent 4 weeks ago. Miss Collins, I think Marcus wanted you to do exactly what you did. Go to Shin for help. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. He used me. He knew I'd be desperate enough to approach Shin. Knew it would look like I was working with him, gathering intelligence. There's more. David pulled out a folder. Marcus has been working with the Chin family for 5 years. They've been systematically dismantling Shin's empire, taking territory, turning allies, cutting supply lines. And they've been using your old case files to do it. What? The client you defended 3 years ago, the one whose case you lost after Marcus leaked evidence? That client had ties to Shin's organization. Marcus didn't just tank your case. He used your legal research, your strategy notes, everything you'd compiled to identify vulnerabilities in Shin's entire network. Sarah's hands shook. Every betrayal she'd thought she understood was so much worse. Why are you telling me this? Because Marcus wants me to plant evidence in Shin's estate. Documents that would frame you as a federal informant. David met her eyes. I've done a lot of questionable things in my career, Miss Collins, But I don't help people murder innocent women. And that's what this is. If the Shin organization thinks you're a rat, you're dead. Sarah's mind raced. Marcus had orchestrated everything. Her humiliation, her desperation, her connection to Shin. He turned her into a weapon aimed at the one man who'd treated her like an equal. What does Marcus think you're doing right now? Tailing you. Reporting your movements. A cold smile curved Sarah's lips. Then that's exactly what you're going to do. But the information you give him? It's going to be whatever I tell you to say. David looked uncertain. You want to feed him false intelligence? I want to burn his entire world down. Sarah pulled out her phone, texting Shin. And I know exactly how to do it. David's phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Status report? Sarah leaned over, reading the message. Tell him I'm planning to leave Shin. That I discovered something that scared me. Tell him I'm vulnerable. You're setting a trap. No, Sarah corrected, her voice cold as winter. I'm finishing what he started. Her phone lit up with Shin's response. Come home. No. We have a traitor to catch. Sarah found Shin in the garden at midnight, standing without the wheelchair or even the cane. He moved with fluid grace, pacing like a caged predator, moonlight cutting sharp shadows across his face. She'd suspected for weeks, had seen the inconsistencies, but watching him walk freely felt like a punch to the chest. How long? Her voice cut through the darkness. Shin turned, no surprise in his expression. He'd known she was there. I could walk 3 months after the shooting. Limited mobility at first, but functional. So everything, the wheelchair, the weakness, letting people think you were broken, it was all a lie. It was strategy. He moved toward her, each step deliberate. After the ambush, I had 2 choices. Recover publicly and watch my enemies scatter, or appear defeated and watch them reveal themselves. I chose survival. You let me believe. Sarah's hands clenched. I felt sorry for you. That first night, I thought I was asking a disabled man to help me, thought there was some nobility in your agreement to do it anyway. There was no nobility. I needed access to the Chin wedding and you provided it. His jaw tightened. But that's not the whole truth anymore. What's the whole truth? Shin stopped inches from her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. The truth is that I've built my entire life on control. On making people see what I want them to see, feel what I need them to feel. I've manipulated allies, destroyed enemies, turned loyalty into a transaction. His voice dropped. And then you walked through my gates with your desperate proposal and your barely concealed rage, and for the first time in years, I met someone who didn't want to use me or fear me or worship me. You just wanted me to show up. That's not true. I wanted to use you just as much as. At first, yes. But somewhere between teaching you to read a room and watching you eviscerate James Chin with nothing but words, somewhere between that first kiss and waking up with you in my bed, I stopped seeing you as an asset. He reached up, his fingers brushing her cheek. I started seeing you as someone I couldn't afford to lose. Sarah's breath caught. You're still manipulating me. Using pretty words to keep me compliant for tomorrow. I'm telling you the truth for the first time since we met, and it terrifies me more than any bullet ever has. Shin's hand moved to the back of her neck, pulling her closer. What began as strategy became something I don't know how to control. You're not supposed to matter this much. But you do. How do I know this isn't another performance? You don't. That's what trust is. A choice made without guarantees. His forehead pressed against hers. Tomorrow people will die. The Chin family will retaliate. Marcus will learn what it costs to betray us both. And when it's over, you'll have to decide if you can build something real with a man who's built his empire on lies. Sarah's hands fisted in his shirt, torn between pushing him away and pulling him closer. I don't know if I can trust you. Then don't trust me. Trust this. He kissed her with devastating honesty, every wall finally down, every defense abandoned. When they broke apart, Sarah whispered against his mouth, if you're lying, if any of this is just strategy, I'll destroy you myself. I know. Shin's smile was sharp and genuine. That's why I'm falling for you. A phone buzzed. Minjun's voice came through on speaker. Sir, we have a problem. Marcus just arrived at the estate gates. He's demanding to see Sarah. And he brought the police. Marcus's midnight visit had ended with lawyers' threats, and Sarah calmly informing the police she was a guest, not a hostage. But his desperation had confirmed what they'd suspected. He knew the wedding was compromised. He just didn't know how badly. Now, 20 hours later, Sarah stood before a full-length mirror in a midnight blue gown that turned her into someone formidable. Shin appeared behind her, back in the wheelchair, his expression unreadable as Minjun adjusted the chair's positioning. "Last chance to walk away," Shin said quietly. Sarah met his eyes in the mirror. Not a chance in hell. The vineyard wedding venue was obscenely beautiful. Rolling hills, string lights, white roses everywhere. Guests in designer clothes sipped champagne and pretended not to notice when Sarah Collins arrived on the arm of Shin Kongwoo. The whispers started immediately. Sarah held her head high, one hand resting possessively on Shin's shoulder as they navigated the crowd. She caught sight of Marcus near the ceremony arch, his face draining of color as their eyes met. Good. Let him feel a fraction of what he'd put her through. East Terrace, 3 men in dark suits. "Yours," Sarah murmured. "Mine," Shin confirmed. Chin has security positioned near the exits. They're expecting something but they don't know what. The ceremony began with traditional elegance. Amanda looked beautiful in white lace, oblivious to the fact that her wedding was ground zero for a war. Marcus stumbled over his vows, his gaze repeatedly drawn to where Sarah sat in the third row, Shin's hand clasped in hers. During the reception they moved through the crowd like predators in formal wear. Sarah noticed everything now. The way Chen's men tracked Shin's movements, the nervous energy of Marcus's colleagues, the excessive security for what should have been a simple society wedding. Then Raymond Chen, Marcus's new father-in-law and the man who'd ordered Shin's assassination, approached with a predatory smile. "Shin Kongwoo, I'm surprised you accepted the invitation. Considering your condition, I'd have thought the travel too difficult." His tone dripped with false concern and real contempt. Shin's expression remained neutral, but Sarah felt the tension radiating from him. "I wouldn't miss it. Marcus is an old friend of Sarah's after all." "Yes, Sarah." Raymond's gaze slid to her with barely concealed disdain. "I heard you've been residing at the Shin estate. Quite a change from corporate law. Tell me, do you provide legal services or other services?" The insult hung in the air. Several guests nearby stopped talking, watching the confrontation unfold. Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but Shin's hand tightened on hers. A warning. He wanted to handle this himself, wanted to play the weakened man a little longer. "Sarah provides exactly what I need," Shin said softly, his voice carrying an edge of threat that contradicted his supposedly vulnerable position. "As for my condition, Raymond, I'm recovering better than anyone expected. In fact..." An explosion rocked the east wing of the venue. Screams erupted as guests scattered. Sarah felt Shin move, felt the muscles in his legs tense beneath his tailored pants as he prepared to abandon the wheelchair. But before he could, gunfire erupted from the terrace. Chen's men were making their move. And Marcus stood frozen in the center of the chaos, staring directly at Sarah with an expression that confirmed her worst fear. He'd planned this. The wedding wasn't just a trap for Shin. It was a trap for her too. Shin rose from the wheelchair like a resurrection, his movement fluid and lethal as he drew a weapon from beneath his jacket. The shock on Raymond Chen's face lasted only a second before Minjun's bullet ended him. The ballroom erupted into controlled chaos. Shin's men emerged from their positions. Waiters dropped trays to reveal weapons. Guests shed formal wear to expose tactical gear. Even the string quartet abandoned their instruments for firearms. This had never been a wedding. It was an execution chamber dressed in white roses. Sarah dove behind an overturned table as bullets tore through silk and champagne glasses. Her legal mind catalogued the insanity. Assault, murder, conspiracy, while her survivor's instinct screamed at her to run. Then she saw Marcus backing toward the service exit, a gun in his trembling hand. Their eyes met across the carnage. He didn't run. Instead he moved toward her with purpose, weapon raised. "You stupid bitch," Marcus snarled as he cornered her near the bar. "You actually thought you were playing him? He's been using you since the beginning. I know exactly what Shin's done. What I want to know is why you destroyed my career, my reputation, my life." Sarah's voice was steady despite the gun pointed at her chest. "Because you were getting too close to the truth about the Chin money laundering operation. Your client was small time, but your investigation was leading somewhere dangerous." Marcus's laugh was bitter. "I loved you once, Sarah. But love doesn't pay for the life I wanted. The Chin family offered me everything: power, money, status. All I had to do was eliminate threats. You were a threat. So you framed me. Took everything I'd built. And I'd do it again. His finger moved to the trigger. Just like I'll tell the police that you were Shin's accomplice. That you planned this massacre. Your DNA is all over his estate, your signature on documents, your face on security footage. When this is over, you'll be the criminal, not me. Sarah saw the calculation in his eyes, the same cold logic that had once attracted her. But she'd learned from a better teacher now. You're right about one thing, she said. My DNA is all over Shin's estate. Which means they'll also find all the evidence I compiled on your money laundering, your conspiracy with the Chin family, your role in framing my client. She smiled. I'm a lawyer, Marcus. Documentation is what I do best. His expression shifted from confidence to uncertainty. You're bluffing. Test me. Before he could, Shin appeared behind him, pressing a gun to Marcus's spine. Drop it. Marcus froze. Around them the fighting had stopped. Chen's men lay dead or subdued. Shin's soldiers controlled every exit. It was over. But Marcus, desperate and cornered, made a final choice. He spun, weapon swinging toward Shin. Sarah moved without thinking, grabbing a champagne bottle from the bar and bringing it down on Marcus's wrist. Bone cracked. The gun clattered to the blood-stained floor. Marcus crumpled, clutching his shattered arm, looking up at Sarah with something like recognition. You've become just like him. No, Sarah corrected, picking up his weapon. I've become exactly who I needed to be. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Minjun materialized beside Shin. Federal agents 2 minutes out. The evidence packages were delivered as planned. Shin turned to Sarah, his hand extended. Time to go. Unless you'd rather stay and explain this to the authorities. Sarah looked at Marcus bleeding on the floor, at the ruins of the wedding that was supposed to showcase her defeat. She thought about her old life. Safe, controlled, suffocating. Then she took Shin's hand. Let's go home. 3 months after the wedding massacre, Sarah Collins no longer existed. At least not the version who'd stood outside Shin's gates clutching a tear-stained invitation. That woman had been desperate, broken, clinging to the wreckage of a life built on other people's expectations. The woman who now walked through Shin's estate with Minjun discussing territory acquisitions and strategic alliances was something else entirely. The eastern docks are secure, Minjun reported as they entered Shin's study. The remaining Chin loyalists have either surrendered or disappeared. Marcus's testimony took down the last of their political connections. Sarah nodded, reviewing the documents on the tablet. Marcus was serving 15 years for conspiracy, racketeering, and attempted murder. His cooperation had dismantled what remained of the Chin Empire, but it wouldn't save him. Some betrayals were unforgivable. Good work, she said. Minjun's slight nod of respect still surprised her sometimes. She'd earned her place here through blood and strategy, not sentiment. After he left, Sarah found Shin standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He'd abandoned the wheelchair entirely now, moving with the lethal grace she'd first glimpsed that midnight in the garden. The lawyers finalized the last acquisition today, he said without turning. We control 60% of the ports, most of the distribution networks, and enough legitimate businesses to make us untouchable. He paused. We did it. You did it. I just helped clean up the legal mess. Now he turned, his dark eyes finding hers with an intensity that still made her breath catch. You did far more than that. You destroyed Marcus's credibility, turned his own testimony into our weapon, and restructured our entire operation to be prosecution-proof. He moved toward her. You've become essential to everything I've built. Which is why I need to ask you something. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. What? Stay. The single word carried more weight than any speech. Not because you're useful. Not because you're trapped or obligated. Stay because you choose this life. Choose me. I chose you the night I took your hand and walked away from that wedding, Sarah said quietly. You chose survival. You chose revenge. I'm asking if you'll choose this. He gestured at the city spread below them, knowing what it costs. Knowing what we are. Sarah moved to the window beside him, looking out over the empire they'd built from blood and betrayal. She thought about who she'd been. The woman who'd believed in justice and fairness and playing by rules that were never designed for her to win. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone who understood that power wasn't given. It was taken. "Marcus once promised me forever," she said. "It was pretty words and empty vows built on lies. You've never promised me anything except honesty about who you are and what this world demands." She turned to face Shin, taking both his hands in hers. "I don't want redemption. I don't want to be saved or fixed or transformed into someone softer. I want this. The darkness, the danger, the truth of what we've become together." Shin pulled her against him, his forehead resting against hers. "No pretty speeches about love? Love is what Marcus called it when he destroyed me. What we have is stronger. It's recognition. It's two people who see each other's monsters and choose them anyway." "Then stay with me," Shin whispered. "Help me build something that lasts. Not despite who we are, but because of it." Sarah's answer came in a kiss that tasted like victory and violence and the future they'd carved from the wreckage of their pasts. Outside, the city glittered beneath them. A kingdom built on shadows, ruled by two people who'd learned that the only vows worth making were the ones written in blood and kept with absolute loyalty. They stood together at the window, Shin's arm around Sarah's waist, both of them silhouetted against the lights below. Two damaged souls who'd found not healing but something better. A partner who matched their darkness and never asked them to be anything but exactly who they were. "No regrets?" Shin asked. Sarah smiled, sharp and genuine. "Not a single one." And that's where Sarah and Shin's story ends. Two souls forged in betrayal, now ruling an empire built on their own terms. Did this dark romance captivate you? Did the twists keep you on the edge of your seat? Show some love by hitting that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what you thought of Sarah and Shin's journey. But the darkness doesn't end here. I have another thrilling story coming your way, one with even higher stakes, deeper betrayals, and a romance that will leave you breathless. Click that next video to continue the addiction. Until then, remember, sometimes the monsters win and sometimes that's exactly what we need. See you in the next story.